Looks like our players are all ready for us.
So normally when I'm playing Jund, this is a matchup that I'm a little nervous in, but I'm usually pretty comfortable. You know, it frequently comes down to the fact that the green-white hexproof deck is pretty inconsistent. The Jund deck is very inconsistent, and with the targeted discard and a few Liliana the Veils, you know, you can usually shut down the green-white hexproof player. You know, at least 2 out of the 3 games in the match. That said, Joe's made some interesting deck building decisions that are going to hurt him a little bit.
Yeah, it looks like Joe does not have any copies of Liliana the Veil. However, Quinn is going to be on the draw and on a mulligan to 4, but he still has turn 1 Slippery Boggle off of his Temple Garden. Joe's going to add a Twilight. Is that a Blossoming Marsh?
Twilight Marsh.
Twilight
Mire.
Mire alongside his Blackleaf Cliffs. Ooh, we've got a Scavenging Ooze. So let's see if Quinn is going to have some kind of creature enchantment. He's going to shock himself down to 16 with a second copy of Temple Garden. All right, we have a Spider Umbra and an Ethereal Armor. So a mulligan to 4 is going to be the perfect 4 cards for Quinn Kiefer.
That's a crunch for 4, I believe. And that thing has first strike. It's going to be able to be regenerated from the Totem Armor if something were able to target it, or there's a, you know, it was going to trade in combat.
Well, Joe Bernal is going to fall down to 16. He's going to take his turn and play another Blackleaf Cliffs. He's going to add a Tarmogoyf to his battlefield and attack Quinn for 2. So we've got a Tarmogoyf and a Scavenging Ooze on Joe's side, but there are no cards in any graveyards to be seen. And there's a Spirit Mantle, which is going to pump his creature by an additional 2 points and give it protection from creatures. So now it looks like we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Joe Bernal is going to take 6 points of damage and fall down to 10.
And Joe is in just full-on race mode. That Lightning Bolt going to Quinn's head, I like that move a lot. He's got a Kolaghan's Command for a little bit more burn, but Joe is not going to be able to interact whatsoever. He's not going to be able to block. He's not going to be able to kill that creature. He has a few Abrupt Decays that he might in his deck that he might be able to use. And potentially line up some blocks, but Joe's certainly on the back foot, despite being on the play and being up against an opponent who mulliganed all the way down to 4.
You don't need all the cards.
You just need the right ones.
You just need the right ones with this Boggles deck.
Yeah.
So that Lightning Bolt is going to knock Quinn down to 11. As you said, it looks like Joe does have a copy of Abrupt Decay in his hand, so he might be thinking, you know, do I need to save this to set up a block? Do I need to save this for something like Daybreak Coronet, or Unflinching Courage to remove any potential lifelink?
Yeah, and what's so difficult about Joe's spot is he needs to decide if he wants to race or try to potentially block. But if he saves his Abrupt Decay for, you know, let's say the Spirit Mantle, Quinn can just top deck another big enchantment that's going to make it bad for Joe to block.
Well, Joe is going to use his Kolaghan's Command. He's going to deal 2 damage to Quinn and make him discard a card. It's going to discard a creature, a Slippery Boggle, which will pump his Tarmogoyf up to a 2/3. So Quinn's going to go down to 9 from the Kolaghan's Command, and then an attack for 4 is going to drop him down to 5.
So an attack for 4 dropping Quinn down to 5 means that chances are Joe's going to be able to kill Quinn on Joe's next turn. So I like this move. It essentially puts Quinn on a 1-turn clock.
So it looks like Quinn just has a land. Windswept Teeth is going to attack Joe down to 4, plays land and pass, and Joe's going to be able to use this Abrupt Decay to kill one of the enchantments on Quinn's creature, which will grow his Tarmogoyf to a 3/4. And along with the Scavenging Ooze will be 5 points of damage, and Joe is going to be able to race the Boggles deck.
Wow, very, very close game, but these decks usually play a Dryad Arbor specifically for Liliana the Veil, because the Liliana the Veil is so good. And Joe's going to have to scoop it up. Can't beat the Dryad Arbor. Too strong.
And there we go. Quinn is going to be able to find that Dryad Arbor and stop this from happening. So if Joe had just attacked and waited until the blocker step, if Quinn gets a Dryad Arbor, then he can use the Terminate in his hand to kill the Dryad Arbor, which puts a land in the graveyard and grows the Tarmogoyf. And if there are no blockers, then he can use the Abrupt Decay. So it seems that Joe, taking out the Liliana, has just forgot about the important interaction in the Boggles deck from Dryad Arbor and is able to give that game to Quinn Kiefer. So let's take a look at the player sideboards and see what we think they're going to do. So on Joe Bernal's side here with Jen, we have 4 Fulminator Mage, 4 Surgical Extraction, 2 Feed the Clan, 2 Collective Brutality, 2 Ancient Grudge, and a Thoughtseize. What would you do in Joe's spot?
So he's honestly lacking on options a bit. I would definitely bring in the Thoughtseize. That's going to be pretty decent. Collective Brutality, it is similar to a Duress effect, but it only gets instants and sorceries. It does not get enchantments, so it's not really going to do much in this situation. He could try to bring in the Feed the Clans to bring a little bit, or to buy a little extra time. I don't really think that's a particularly good idea. Fulminator Mage is some weak interaction also. And then you could make a small argument for Surgical Extraction if he can, Thoughtseize something important like a, Glaive Cover Scout, and then Surgical Extraction. That could be a decent line, but I would bring in the Thoughtseize. I honestly probably wouldn't bring in much else except for the fact that some of his cards are so bad in the matchup. Like he's got 4 Terminates, so you're probably going to see some of these weaker options come in.
Now on Quinn's side, we have 4 Leyline of Sanctity, 4 Rest in Peace, 2 Dismember, 2 Natural State, 2 Stony Silence, and a copy of Gadok Teague. What do we think Quinn's going to do?
So I don't think Quinn wants to sideboard a whole lot. He may not even want to sideboard at all, potentially. I think he can make a good argument for Dismember. If Joe has a turn 2 Tarmogoyf, that's a good way for Joe to race him. So Dismember can kind of blow that up. Rest in Peace, you can make a small argument there, but it really only interacts with Scavenging Ooze and Tarmogoyf, and it doesn't even interact with them. Well, it doesn't interact with Scavenging Ooze that well. So I would bring in probably the 2 Dismembers, and that's it.
Yeah, I think I like Dismember. Looking over the rest of Quinn's deck here, everything else just seems already very great against John. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's such a streamlined deck, and a lot of Quinn's sideboard options, if he draws them, it's not like he wins the game. Like if you draw Stony Silence against Affinity and you play it on turn 2, you're probably just going to win the game.
Yeah.
But a lot of his options aren't these like super potent haymakery options. So I think he's just going to bring in the 2 Dismembers. Which
is one of the strengths of John as a deck, is there aren't many options that are just super haymakery against them.
Yep.
So while our players are finishing up sideboarding, let's just take a quick second to talk about all of the awesome perks that you can get by subscribing to the Twitch page here. So you can join the feature match area. You decide the quarterfinals, get custom emoticons and badges, and it's only $4.99 per month. Twitch.tv/SCGLive. That's where you can join the feature match area today. And don't forget, for those of you who happen to have Twitch Prime through your Amazon Prime subscription, you get a free sub that you can use. Feel free to use it here on the SCG Live channel. Because again, you guys get to decide who the quarterfinals match is, and that's pretty sweet.
And this is just a great way to support esports.
Yeah.
I mean, I subscribe to you, and I see that, in my Gmail it pops up every month, and I'm like, all right, go Chris Van Meter. I'm gonna help keep you going.
All right. Well, it looks like our players are going to draw their opening 7 here. Joe Bernal is going to likely be on the play. This Jun deck. Ooh, looks like he might have Fulminator Mage.
Yeah, he's lacking on interaction. Fulminator Mage can get Dryad Arbor, but also, this green-white hexproof deck, it's a little inconsistent. It's known for sometimes keeping 1 landers that can, kind of get blown up. And it has a lot of dual lands, but maybe there's a corner case scenario where Joe can lock Quinn off of 1 color of mana.
All right, well, Joe is going to use his Verdant Catacombs, fall to 19 to get a basic swamp. And we're going to fire off an Inquisition of Kozilek. So Quinn is going to reveal a hand. Windswept Heath, Temple Garden, Glade Cover Scout, Spirit Mantle, 2 Ethereal Armors, and 1 copy of Rancor. So Joe is just going to take the only creature that Quinn has in his hand. And that's actually really heads up by Joe. So he does have a Duress in his hand.
Yep.
And sometimes you might think about starting off with Duress, as it's more restrictive than Inquisition, to give you more information on what you might want to take with an Inquisition later. But with this hexproof deck being so light on creatures, the potential of stranding a handful of enhancers like this is pretty good. And there you go, just like we talked about in sideboarding. Joe is going to pay 2 life to Surgical Extraction Glade Cover Scout in Quinn's draw step.
Literally the cards that I said.
Yeah.
I think that
You're like
while
a prophet.
yeah, I think while this looks good, and it's going to play out pretty successfully here because Quinn really needs to top deck a creature, and now he's down to just very, very few options in his main deck. But this basically speaks to just how little interaction Joe really has for this matchup.
Yeah, so a lot of times in these Boggles decks, you're going to see core Spirit Dancer.
Yeah, as a card draw
but
engine.
it looks like Quinn has Selena Ledgewalker instead. So he has just another slippery creature that can't be targeted by his opponents. But that one is also even harder to block.
Yeah.
All right, so Joe Bernal has a Raging Ravine and a Duress. It's just going to reveal a Daybreak Coronet along with the rest of the enhancers that Joe already knew about.
And one thing that we might see here is it's not completely unreasonable for Quinn to just end of turn, fetch up a Dryad Arbor, untap, Rancor it, and just start attacking, you know.
So it looks like Joe is going to take the Daybreak Coronet.
And Joe probably took out a lot of his Terminates, but kept the Abrupt Decays. So sometimes in these post-board games, Dryad Arbor can actually end up being, you know, kind of a nasty threat.
Quinn does go get a Temple Garden, so he's not going to utilize his Dryad Arbor yet. He's going to take a draw, and there's a Slippery Boggle.
Wow.
Right off the top.
Top decking like a pro.
He's going to shock himself down to 17 for the Temple Garden, and then put that Rancor on Slippery Boggle and pass the turn back to Joe Bernal.
And Quinn doesn't really know what he's up against. He could be up against a Jund deck that has 4 Liliana of the Veils. We know that Joe doesn't have that card, but Quinn wants to play the Rancor here because it's basically the disposable enchantment because it will return to Quinn's hand if it hits the graveyard from play.
So Joe is going to fetch to 16 with his Verdant Catacombs, get a basic Swamp. It's a Fulminator Mage, and he's going to take out one of Quinn's white sources. That's going to try and strand some more creature enchantments in his hand. Looks like Quinn picked up a Ledgewalker for his turn. He's just going to put an Ethereal Armor on that Slippery Boggle and attack for 5. It's going to knock Joe down to 11, and Joe has a Scavenging Ooze and another copy of Raging Ravine for his turn.
And, you know, normally I think this is a fairly even matchup. I think with the way that Joe has constructed his deck specifically, because he has no Liliana of the Veils, I think it's like, you know, we're looking at like a 90-10 matchup or something like that. So
yeah,
this is just real tough.
Well, the second Ethereal Armor is going to allow him to attack for 9. We got a Kalitas Trader of Get from Joe, and a tapped Blackleaf Cliffs.
And I think basically Joe's drawing dead. He can block here, but Quinn's creature is huge, has trample and first strike. So, you know, an attack is still going to be profitable for Quinn.
All right. Well, Quinn is just going to attack with his creature. Joe is going to put his Scavenging Ooze in front of it, and as long as Quinn announces where that damage is going trample-wise, Joe's going to scoop it up and shake Quinn Kiefer's hand. Quinn Kiefer on his mulligan to 4.
The tiny assassin strikes again.
And after getting his creatures surgical extracted, picked one up. Green-white hexproof, the old Boggle strategy, is going to take round 1 here against Joe Bernal. That's going to move Quinn on to 1-0 on his search for his first open top 8.
Yeah, off to a great start. You know, Modern's been